topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson show. She is an author, and she wrote Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with World High Stakes Golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a glittery, glowing day. I'm January Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast. As you can see, I'm in my glitter granny attire, which we'll tell you about later in the show. Also, I'm wearing an American Heart Association t-shirt. My husband is a heart survivor, and we were invited to walk in the Tampa General Hospital walk last weekend. It was an honor, and we're so proud of our shirts. Now for my listeners, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a chance to meet a psychiatrist? Yes, a real one. One who is passionate about women's rights, as I am. What do you think about Roe versus Wade being overturned? Well, everyone has opinions about that these days. Also, do you remember the first time you heard about a school shooting? Yeah, we all do remember that. Can you imagine what it would be like to deal with someone with mental health issues within your own family? Tell me, have you ever heard of a book called Us Fractured? If you can answer yes or maybe to any of these questions, then you are in the right place. And I'd like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Senior Success Stories. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my guest today. Before we do that, be sure to go get your wine, cheese, and crackers. That's our ritual here. You know, I have mine here. My guest was born in Kenya, and she went to school in Britain and Scotland. Yes. And then she moved to America when she was only 26 years old, which is a pretty young time to move anywhere. She's a licensed psychiatrist and practicing for over 25 years, working with children mostly and adults too. And during the pandemic, with the increased incidence of mental health issues, she decided to write 3 books, Us Unhinged, and Us Fractured. Great titles. It is my pleasure to welcome to the show Dr. Shila Patel. Hi, Shila.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show. It's a real honor.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you on. I've been looking forward to this. The story's got to be fascinating. So you started out, how did your parents get to Kenya? Tell us the Kenya part of your story.
My father was an amazing a man who really believed in improving his destiny. So at the very young age, between 17 and 19, he and a friend got on a boat, because at that time there were, no flights or anything coming all the way over from India to the east coast of Kenya. His older brother had already settled in Kenya by that time. The reason why we went to East Africa was because it was a British colony. And when my parents were born, they were under the British rule in India. So everybody was born a British citizen, so they could travel to a British colony.
Oh, okay.
So that's how my dad ended up in Kenya. Now, all of East Africa was British colonies: Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And my mother was in Uganda, and she came over only when she was 5 years old to be with her parents. And
Okay.
so when my dad and mom had an arranged marriage,
Oh, okay.
they ended up settling in Kenya.
Okay.
Where I was born.
They both were originally from India.
Yes, they were both originally born in India, but grew up really in Africa.
Okay. Okay. So then you were born. How did they meet? I would be interested in hearing that.
It's more of an arranged marriage. They, there were not that many Indian families around. And so by word of mouth, knowing that there are certain people around, somebody is of a marrying age, because at that time, once you reach the age of 17 or 18, the women were married off.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
My father was so progressive that when he went to meet my mom, she was in her final year of high school. And he said he was not going to marry till she graduated from high school. And so he let her finish high school, and then they got married.
Oh,
but mom was a very young mother. She had my twin sisters and me before the age of 21. So she's more like a friend now. In fact, she'll turn 90 this December, and we are having a huge celebration for her next Saturday for her 90th birthday.
Oh my gosh. Is your dad still with you too?
No, sadly, he passed away 10 years ago when I moved to Florida, because I practiced in Georgia. Okay. But dad had loved this place and wanted to move and live close to us with the beach. And sadly, he passed away 6 months after we moved here. But mom has been amazing. I mean, she only had her high school education. She's never driven. She's never opened a check. She's never opened any mail. And she chose to live by herself in her home. And that's where she's been. And so my sister takes care of her for most of the time. She lives a block away from her. And I go home and take care of the bills, weeding her back patio, since she can't do that anymore, cutting her shrubs, taking care of the mail, taking care of any repairs that need to be done in the house. So I stay with her a week to 10 days. So she has some company with her as well.
Oh, wonderful. This is fabulous, because this show is about senior success stories. And I'm so proud. I turned 81 this last year. And 81, and then meeting a success story who's turned 90. It's incredible. And then on top of it all, I got a very, very early Christmas card from a friend, and worked with him through the years. And he is going to be 102.
That's awesome.
Go figure. Okay, so your parents, so what prompted them to come to America?
My father had always wanted to immigrate to America. At that time, they were allowing professionals to come over, and he was an accountant. And so when in Africa, you can go to the universities after high school, but the degree is not recognized all over the world. So what happens is that once we finish high school, you can either go to England, because we were British citizens, or, some kids went to India for further education. But my father, since I and my sisters were in England in the universities, Dad came over from Africa, but he really didn't like the weather. He didn't like the cold, clammy, drizzly weather of
England.
London. And so he had always wanted to come over to America. And we actually had green card visas to come over. But Dad kind of held back a couple of years because we were all settled in and studying in England.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was halfway through med school, and my sisters had already finished their pharmacy school and their podiatry school, they all moved over to America. And I told Dad that I would visit every summer and then I would come over once I finished medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stayed on an extra year to do my housemanship, because to register as a physician in England, you have to do an extra year. And so I finished med school, I did my houseman year, and then I came over at 26.
Wow. Now, okay, so you're all very professional women, very accomplished women. Dare I ask, did you have arranged marriages in your futures?
Well, both my sisters had arranged marriages.
Oh, really?
I have a funny story, because I was very, very confident at the age of 18. Once I finished high school and finished my 2 years of pre-university, I did not want to be a physician. I said, I'm going to be a dentist. I can be at top of my profession in 6 years. I don't have to go through med school and residency and all that. Mm-hmm. And so I applied to the Dental School of London and got in. Okay. But I had to wait out a year because I couldn't get any assistance from the government for the schooling till I had been in the country 3 years. And so I decided to just go back to school, and I loved languages. So I said, I'll take French and German, and I had already had Latin. And so I decided to do that for the year. Well, I had a boyfriend in high school, and I had pushed him to go into medical school because that's what he wanted to do. So he went to St. Andrews, Scotland, to medical school. So, of course, after going there, he couldn't live without me and wanted me to come and visit. And so, I was very bad. I ran off for a week. I told my parents I was visiting my sister and went to St. Andrews to see him for a week. Well, during that week, I went and saw the dean of the medical school. And guess what? He offered me a position for medical school for the following year. Voila!
Oh my gosh. And so
nobody would believe that this is how I got into medical school. No. Because I already had my grades to get into dental school. And so I didn't need anything extra to get into medical school. And so he said, well, I'll offer you a place for next year.
So then love conquers all. Yes. And I would love to have heard the conversation when you broke that one to your parents.
I know. You know what? I never told Mom and Dad how I got into medical school. I just said I applied and I got in.
So is the happy ending to this story is you married another doctor?
Well, it was sad because and maybe that's, that'll come up in the conversation, but he was an only child. We always talked about having a cricket team for children. We wanted lots of children. Yeah. Well, sadly, I had an ectopic pregnancy.
Oh.
And being a physician, I went to the doctors and I said, I've got pain in my right side. You need to take a look at that and make sure that it's not an ectopic pregnancy. They did a test, ultrasound, and said, no, it's just a cyst. Don't worry about it. Well, 10 days later, I woke up in the morning with 1.5 liters of blood in my perineum. And to make long story short, I had a lot of infertility issues. When I went through all my residency at Medical College of Georgia, we tried every way we could, and there was no way I could get pregnant. Oh. And so I was the only female psychiatrist in that area for 15 years, and he was the only neurologist in that area. Mm-hmm. And so both of us had incredibly busy private practices. Right. And there comes a time when you're not taking care of each other, and we became more like a brother and sister. And so we are still the best of friends.
Okay.
And I ended up having a partner for 36 years now, and we traveled together, and he was a counselor at the hospital where I worked. So we were both in mental health. And my ex-husband ended up marrying a younger Catholic nurse, of course. 10 years younger and gave him 5 children.
Okay.
And so he got the family that he wanted. He had the children that he wanted. But sadly, his wife passed away at 49 after giving him the 5 children.
Oh, wow.
So he ended up marrying her sorority sister, who so strangely looks just like her. And so he got help in raising the 5 children. So I think destiny plays a big part in how your life is going to go. And it doesn't matter how hard you try, because as a young child, I always said I was going to be a physician, because whenever anybody asked, what are you going to be? You ask little kids, what are you going to be when you grow up? I always used to say, I'm going to be a doctor. Then I fought so hard about it and said, no, I'm going to be a dentist. I'm not going to be a doctor. Well, you end up being a doctor. You don't have children, but I treated so many children in my 25 years that I always refer to them as my children. Yeah. And I was very, very protective when I was practicing.
That is so fascinating, because just last night, my husband and I, we've been married 54 years now. And we were talking about the same thing, about how destiny can bring people together and also can take them apart, sadly, sometimes through death or different situations. But I'm a true believer in destiny. And I think you were meant to be on my show.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So now we're going to take a break, and we're going to hear all about how to glitter and glow.
Welcome to Glitter Granny Gifts, to give or to get. Hosted by January Jones, aka Glitter Granny, and her Golden Doodle Ginger Ale. If you're a granny who wants to glitter and glow, it's time to join us for a sparkling shopping experience that will be unique and so very special. Whenever you need a spectacular gift, Granny will help you find it. Along with gifts for family, friends, and holidays, there are even glitter gifts for coworkers, in-laws, doctors, and you can even find something for your friend who has everything. If you need a really good gag gift, you'll find it here. Hats, canes, shoes, accessories. Now, just go to glittergranny.com and check it out.
Yes, especially with the holidays coming on. You can get all sorts of fabulous gifts. Also, if you go to Glitter Granny and sign on to my website, you can download Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, which reached #1 at Amazon in religion and humor. Who knew? Also, Shila, could you share your book? Could you show us your book and tell our listeners where they can get your book too?
Okay, my books are available on Amazon. This is the first one that I wrote. It was titled U.S. Unhinged, and this big book is available on Kindle. Okay. The reason why I had to split it up into 2 because it was too big for a first-time writer. Oh, and so my book 1, in fact, is Us Unhinged, book 1. And the second book is called U.S. Unhinged. It was just a play on words. Us meaning the first book is all about relationships. And I started writing about it because of Me Too movement. And I wanted to put the information out there, both from the male and the female perspective, because I did get a little frustrated with women jumping on the bandwagon and saying, me too, me too. And I wanted people to really understand. And having treated so many women in my practice, that I felt like I was qualified to give some opinions, give some information, and also what they can do instead of ruining the reputations of certain men after 50 years of the incident having happened. Let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah.
And, we talk a lot about false memories, something that we have been carrying from our childhood, we project onto other people, and how that influences our way of thinking, our way of looking, and false accusations can ruin somebody's whole life. And then the other thing I also wanted to talk about in Us Unhinged was also relationships. Like I mentioned, that I and my ex-husband have remained incredibly good friends. And how I could never understand when people say they love each other, they care about each other, and then they get a divorce, and then, it's full-scale hatred. And I just wanted people to understand that there are alternatives, how you are responsible for how you feel, how you are responsible for what you put into the relationship. So I talked a lot about emotions, how the different neurons in your brain, from a medical point of view, how they dictate whether you feel sad, happy, lonely, what kind of things come up, and how to deal with all these issues. So that was the Us Unhinged. And then the US.
I was just going to say that brilliant titles, whether it's Us or US, a terrific play on the word US.
Thank you. The US Unhinged, basically, like you mentioned about the school mass shootings, and the abortion issues were beginning to come up, because in 22, that's when Roe versus Wade got reversed, and I was horrified. And I living in America, I could have never expected this kind of freedom to be taken away from women. And especially the reason why I share about having the ectopic pregnancy and why this is so important, because what's happening now is that the doctors are so scared to touch the women. And we are hearing case after case of women not being treated adequately, doctors being scared to deal with these emergencies because of the fear of retaliation, not having access to obstetricians, because really where the states have put in all these restrictions, you won't believe there's going to be a 33% less of obstetricians actually practicing in those states, because they don't want to deal with, like in Texas. I mean, anybody can, what they call sue thy neighbor law, $10,000 for anybody providing care or helping, or the woman herself trying to get an abortion. Oklahoma's even worse. They want to charge, they want to fine 100,000. There are other states which they can go after the doctor for 4 years and fine $20,000. I mean, unbelievable laws that the states have passed. And for me, I could have died if I did not have access to care that I got. Talking. So that is why I am so passionate about women's rights and what you can do with your body. And later on, hopefully we'll talk about some statistics on, how much the maternity mortality rate has gone up, how much the infant mortality rate has gone up, and all the reasons for why all this has happened, because of the draconian, abortion laws that have taken place in this land of freedom for us.
Well, I was fortunate enough as a young girl to go to an all-girls Catholic school. And it was an incredible experience for me, because having all girls, we didn't have to compete with boys, or, and it kind of set us up to, like, we ran the show, we did the student council, we organized everything. We were in charge of our school lives. And so many women from that era, and many of my dear friends, we're diehard feminists just from the experience, our educational experience. And had we gone to a co-ed school, we might not have felt so confident about our lives. Devastating. I was devastated because I was hoping once in my lifetime I would see a woman become our president, and that did not happen. What chances are there now? Not very many chances of a woman actually getting to the presidency, just because the system is so biased.
Yes.
Against
and biased.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been depressing. So I'm sure a lot of your patients are coming to you and talking about that these days, aren't they?
Well, I'm retired now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Well,
So,
I'll talk to you
but
about.
but when I talk on podcasts, and that, that's basically what I'm
Mhm.
hearing, is that, they want me to reach out and talk about how it is affecting women, how it is affecting, because my concern is that the pro-choice people or pro-life people, they're only looking at the unborn baby, the few cells, and especially since a lot of the abortion bans are within 6 weeks, the women don't even know they're pregnant. It's only a few cells. It's less than a peanut size.
Uh-huh.
And sadly, they're not looking at the woman that's in front of them. They're not looking at the young girl that got raped or had an incestual relationship or even sex trafficking, the way they got pregnant. They're not looking at the woman who has raised 2 or 3 children safely and, in a loving environment, and they just cannot afford to have a 4th or a 5th child. They're not looking at those cases at all.
Yeah.
And that is what is so heartbreaking, is how can you look at a woman right in front of you who is living, who is making decisions, what is best for her and her body, and you're making decisions based on your own reality of what is right and wrong. You're not putting yourself in those people's shoes. And that's what's so sad.
Oh, definitely. And, we earlier spoke about the Me Too movement, and that gave me such great hope that women were finally coming out in the open. They were finally telling their story, sharing their traumas and sharing their hopes, and finally getting some of these issues resolved. And it seems I just feel depressed because I think we're just going backwards.
Well, we have taken a big step backwards with this election, and that's what's so sad. I was so enthusiastic with this election that I really felt like majority of Americans are kind-hearted, respectful people. That's what I have met in my 40 years of living in America. I have never felt like I was treated as a foreigner or an immigrant or anything like that. And women's rights, and women are just so confident. They're so, there are more girls going to college. There are more girls graduating from college. But the men took it so wrong. Women have been struggling for centuries to not be a second-class citizen. Let's face it, it's all over the world. And even in America, it's the men that are making decisions for women, because there are so few women in the Congress and in the House of Representatives that are making decisions what is in the best welfare for women. And here, even in America, that they make decisions, and women sadly have gone along with this in this election. And that, every family has a daughter, a wife, a girlfriend, a mother, and how can they not vote for what's best for that woman?
It's a puzzlement. It is a puzzlement at this time. We're going to take a break, and I'm actually going to share my book that's in the process of coming out, is Kindle ebook and paper book all this week, that I'm very excited about. And after we talk about my book, I'm going to give you my theory about how to end war. We'll be right back.
Juicing, living, and dying without whining. A memoir. 80 years of magical moments, written by January Jones. Patriotic moments. Revealing moments. Thrilling and comforting moments. Sassy moments. The age of Aquarius. Exciting moments. Reality moments. Career moments. Touching moments. with many, many more magical moments. Available at Amazon.com and Audible.com.
I hope everyone will buy my book. And if you buy it at Amazon, be sure to write a review. And I was going to share with Shila my theory on how to end war. I think we could end all wars in the world if we had the House of Representatives made up of only mothers. Now, I'm not talking about having to be a natural mother. I'm talking about stepmothers. I'm talking about adopted. I'm talking about women who basically take care and raise children all over. The Senate would be only grandmothers. Now, when these war issues come up, if you have a bunch of mothers and grandmothers determining the fate of their children, their grandchildren, there won't be any more war. That'll be it. There'll be no way that we'll have another war. I think war is something that happens to make rich men richer.
Absolutely.
That's my theory.
Well, if you even look at the pandemic, the countries, what I addressed also in my books was, when I first started writing, the pandemic had just come about. And so I wrote a lot about what to expect as far as mental health issues and what kind of problems to anticipate during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Then in my second book, The U.S. Fracture, which was the last book, the vaccinations had come out. And I talked a lot about the effects of the vaccinations, what the scientists are saying, what the anti-vaxxers are reporting, what kind of problems, the long COVID problems, etc. But during that research, I also looked at all the countries who had female prime ministers or presidents. And do you know that every single country that had a female president or prime minister fared better with their COVID response than did the male countries? A lot of the European countries, which was very interesting, that Sweden was one that had a male prime minister and their country did not fare well. New Zealand did extremely well with having the female prime minister there. And a lot of it was due to empathy, understanding, listening, and basically taking care of the people. Males don't have that inherent qualities.
Nurturing,
exactly. And I think that's what your theory is based on, is that basically women have that instinct of caretaking and men have that instinct of fighting and being aggressive and taking care of the family in another manner. You're right that it's more the warmongers or the people that want to make more money from ammunitions or tanks or, war merchandise. They want to keep these wars going. Sadly, your theory would work, but it would have to be across the world.
And I actually did some research on this because I love writing conspiracy books. And there are over 70 countries already in our world that have had women prime ministers, women rulers. I mean, gosh darn, look at the British Empire. Some pretty savvy women who have handled that.
Queen Elizabeth ruled for how many years?
And that's why I was so disappointed, because I think our country could experience that. And in doing so, I think we would see so much of what is missing as far as empathy and compassion.
And taking care of everybody, not just the super rich, and not only the people that make the most noise, because that's what's happening now, is that the squeaky wheel is the one that's getting out there.
Yes, it's been a very difficult time for the entire country. Now, let me look at your perspective. You said as an immigrant that you did not face any prejudice or obstacles, that you were just accepted. Why do you think it's changing so dramatically?
Well, if I have one criticism about the Biden administration is that they really did let a lot of immigrants into the country illegally. And when my father came over, like I said, he was an accountant, and he had to come over as a professional. All of us came in legally. We came in and got integrated into the community. We learned to speak English. That's a crazy thing to say, because I grew up speaking English since I grew up with English teachers. So I grew up with Indian languages and English speaking. But I think the reason why Indians do well in this country is because we integrate, we get involved. I hate to break down different cultures, but Muslims have a hard time integrating. They're more into their own way they dress, the way they talk. The Hispanics are similar. They come in and they only talk. A lot of them just know how to speak Spanish. And even in Florida, it's so difficult for me to sometimes go into the stores, because I wonder, am I in America or am I in one of the Spanish countries? Because they only have literature in Spanish. The staff only speaks Spanish, and it's very difficult to come to realization. But integration and getting involved with your community, plus also contributing, I think that's the biggest part of. And I'm not saying that the immigrants don't contribute, because I really feel like there is such a lack of manpower in this country. And, when Biden took over, there were, and especially after the pandemic, there were 11 million jobs that were not fulfilled. Okay. They complain about the immigrants taking over their jobs, but they're not willing to go out into the fields and pick seasonal produce and work on the rooftops and work hard in the yards. Who do you see working out on the roads, on the rooftops, in the gardens? They're all immigrants. And so you cannot try saying that immigrants only take. No, they contribute a lot to the American economy too. But I think that integration, and I think that was one of the main reasons. One, I spoke good English, so people could understand my English. The other reason was that I was willing to really be involved with the people, give back a lot, and contribute. I think those are very important things for immigrants to understand when they come in. You're not only just taking. And I think that the anger has risen from people rightly or wrongly believing, and the Republicans putting out all these wrong messages saying that the money that should be going to the people is going to the immigrants, that they're getting Social Security, they're getting Medicare. How can they get Social Security and Medicare when the Americans ourselves have to wait till we are 65? We have to contribute so much to the Medicare fund and Social Security to get anything back. But people just want to listen to this false narrative or messages. And like I said, sadly, the American people, I hate to say, because of social media, they only look at headlines. They don't actually dwell into looking at the information. Is it right? Is it wrong? Does this make sense? They just, whatever inflames them, they're going to attach to it. And I think that was the main reason why with Trump and all the people around him put out all this false information, which people just grabbed and felt like, he was telling that this is exactly what's happening. And that's not what was happening.
Yeah. Well, I just am terrified to think of what our country is going to be like with the mass deportation approach to this problem. We all agree it was a big problem.
Already the farmers are saying that they're going to have massive losses because they're not going to have people to work in the fields. They're not going to have people, or so much produce is going to go to waste. Farmers are scared to death about this happening.
Right. Yeah. And as far as the economy, that's going to take a real big hit.
It is.
The morale of the country when you're deporting people.
Right.
And I know we all say the illegals, we don't want them, but then the part of the problem is most of their families are legal by now. A lot of their families have been born here.
Right.
And I worry, are those people going to be deported? We don't know.
Well, that's what he's saying, that he's going to take away the rights of Americans that have been born in America. They are not, he's going to even deport them.
Mm-hmm.
And during his first term, he split up so many families and children.
Mm-hmm.
And, if these children all of them haven't even been reconciled with their parents. I cannot even imagine the chaos that's going to occur. And, he's talking about using military to do that. How are the military people going to feel having to go around and do this? When I bet you, there's a good percentage of military people that are
not going to do that. Yeah. And then let's just address before this wonderful interview podcast visit is over, the problem with the gun violence and the school shootings. As we talked about, everyone knows when they heard about it, their first one, it was just devastating. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing.
Right.
And now these assault rifles, there's a place and a time for an assault rifle. God knows, my husband served in Vietnam. He has 2 Purple Hearts. We know all about what weapons of war are for and what they can do. And they're not for children. And they're not for young people to go and use indiscriminately.
Right.
Yeah, it's a problem.
I have written at length about, why it is so detrimental, why the Supreme Court ruled for these little gizmos to be put into the weapons to make it an assault weapon and make it legal. I have no understanding about why the Supreme Court judges are even ruling the way they are, because they have really, not only with Roe versus Wade, but with these assault type weapons too, that they have made 2 very, very bad decisions. And the only hope that I'm seeing now is that the parents are being held responsible for what they're buying for their kids. And I think that's a good step, because it's the parents ultimately who should know that it's like when my spouse's son, who is an avid gun collector and he had young children. Well, I gave him money and I said, buy you a big safe, because I want all your weapons locked away in there. I said, kids are very curious by nature. And I said, I don't need your weapons to be lying around or whatever. But it's very sad that the parents don't use better common sense, especially in these last couple of shootings where they knew that the child was having problems at school. He had anger issues. It was the same with Parkland shooting, that they ended up letting him having access, but whether it's just going into a cabinet or whatever, it doesn't matter. They should never have access to these kind of weapons. Like you said, there is no reason for anybody to have assault type weapons.
Another thing I always refer back to when I'm writing about conspiracies, talking about them, or crimes, follow the money. Right. And when we're talking about the assault weapons, the money trail is there, and it leads directly from the NRA to the people, directly to the Congress, to the Senate.
Not only to the Congress, but also the lobbyists.
Yes.
They are basically funding what decisions the lawmakers are making. See, this is why it really frustrates me that the people elect these people, and these people are not taking care of the Americans. They're making decisions because of the money that they're getting. Everything boils down, sadly, to money, greed, and power.
Absolutely.
I
know. And, and as far as the Second Amendment, we have a gun. I understand everyone can have a gun, be responsible. You do not need an assault
weapons, right?
Yeah.
You don't need something that kills 50 people,
seconds.
Right, in seconds.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, gosh, we're so on the same page about so many things. What can we share with our listeners in a positive way, especially for our women listeners? Have you any thoughts that would help women?
I get grounded when I talk to my mother. She's 90 years old. And like I said, I may be a physician and I am 68 years old, but I love talking to her and listening to her wisdom. My thing is, please reach out and put your cell phones down, put your social media away, connect with the women in your life, learn, because one of the things that I talked about in the first book, the Us Unhinged, was in some ways women and men are, I think the men got angry because they're losing their identity. Women are impinging on their careers, on their schooling, that they were used to being the head, being the main breadwinner, but now have conversations that there is a lot of equality. Just because the woman earns more or is more educated does not mean that she doesn't want a partner that's going to share things with her. Let's work on this as a couple. Let's do things together. And I think it's the same thing that what you want to learn from your mothers and your grandmothers. They have a lot of wisdom, and talk to them. I think that they have so many important messages to give you. It's like I tell the girls, you need to learn to sew. You need to learn to cook. You need to maintain some of these feminine qualities. Don't just be. I'm a physician. I went to school. I'm the main breadwinner, but I still cook a dinner every night. When a button comes off the shirt or shorts, I'm the one that sews it back on. My mother has given us so many good examples of how to be a really good caregiver and a caretaker. My father, on the other hand, gave us a lot of good information about how to get ahead in life, how to have good education. And that's what I tell the girls, that, forge a career for yourself, be self-confident. Yeah. And I talk a lot about parenting, because I really think that building confident children, and that's why I give my example of how I got into medical school. It's all about confidence and how you come across. Absolutely. And the parents these days are not letting children overcome obstacles. They want to take care of everything. Got to build confident children.
Yes. I want to have you back because I want to talk to you. I want to do a show about the helicopter parents. Okay. And also, I have never heard the term snow plowing.
Snow parents, right?
So I definitely will have you back. Okay. And thank you so much
for
visiting with us today. And I hope that my listeners, I hope you've all enjoyed Shila and our time together. We have tried to be informative, and we've been tried to be inspiring. I hope we haven't been too depressing. Thank you for entering the No Wine Zone, and please share our stories and our show with everyone you know. Remember, you need to stop whining, and then you need to start smiling. And if that doesn't work, then you need to start eating chocolate. Lots and lots of chocolate. Take care and stay safe. And be sure to glitter and glow with us at Glitter Granny. Thank you, Shila. Until we meet again, take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We want to thank you for listening to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Always remember Ms. Jones' personal mantra: if you can think it, you can do it. That's what all of our guests have done with their lives, and so can you. You are the ultimate success coach in your own life. All you need to do will be to start sharing your own story with your family and friends. We hope that our guest stories will encourage you to explore an equation in your future that will combine your creativity plus connecting with others will enable you to be successful too. Always remember, your passion plus your purpose will equal prosperity as you explore the wonderful world of January Jones.